Hey everyone, this is Charlie Shrem, and you're listening to Untold Stories. This is a show where we dive deep into the lives and personal histories of some of crypto's most influential leaders and find out how the crypto movement truly came to be. Let's dive in. In this episode of Untold Stories, we're talking to Vinny Lingham, and it was such a great episode because Vinny was so integral in the mass adoption of Bitcoin going back to 2012 and 2013. It was really interesting to see his opinion. We talked about how Bitcoin could collapse the world economy and be banned forever. But don't worry, because it's always good to talk about some of these crazier, different ideas and thoughts. As the founder of Gyft, that's spelled Gyft, he shared how allowing gift cards purchases using Bitcoin gave him deep metrics and insights into the usage and movements of Bitcoin. This is back in 2012. Vinny and I also discussed how his creation of Civic affects privacy and what is the difference between privacy and anonymity. Vinny explained it really well. We talked about his critical points on entrepreneurship, grit, and how to be successful over the competition. Lastly, Vinny gives his prediction for Bitcoin in 2020 and beyond. This is such a great episode. Vinny was an integral part and still is of mass adoption with Bitcoin. He's controversial in his opinions, but he's super smart and worth listening to. Enjoy the episode. How do you actually live your life on crypto? How do you spend Bitcoin? How do you live and actually help continue to grow this ecosystem? Since 2016, so for over 3 years, I've been personally using the BitPay prepaid Visa card, and it's amazing. So check it out at bitpay.com/card. That's bitpay.com/card. You can also buy gift cards from over a dozen merchants in the app itself. So it's pretty easy. You get the card in the mail, you activate it, you download the app, you send some Bitcoin to the app, and you load the card into dollars with your Bitcoin and then spend it. It's so easy, it's so convenient, and I've been using it for a few years. Check it out, bitpay.com/card. I'm super excited to share that we're now working with Bitpanda here at Untold Stories. Bitpanda is a leading European platform for investing in digital assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Their core product is an easy-to-use crypto on-ramp and digital asset broker with over 1 million users. How cool is that? You can not only trade crypto like Bitcoin and Ether, but you can also trade digitized gold and around 30 other digital assets. What's amazing about Bitpanda is how easy it is to set up an account within minutes and get going with the minimum amount of just €1. So make sure you check out Bitpanda. They are a sponsor of Untold Stories. I love them, especially if you're in Europe or anywhere in the world. Bitpanda.com. Thank you so much, guys. Untold Stories wouldn't be here without the amazing production company Blockworks Group. A few months ago, I approached Blockworks Group and I said, hey guys, I want to do a show, Untold Stories. Can we make it happen? And these guys are the only event and podcast production company that I trust. Really, the show is powered by them, and it wouldn't be here today without the amazing work of the Blockworks Group team. So for access to all the premier digital asset conferences and to check out their other podcasts in their network that they produce, check them out at blockworksgroup.io. That's blockworksgroup.io. I promise you will not be disappointed. I'm really excited that we're having Vinny Lingham on the show today. Vinny, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Charlie. Good to be here.
Before I get into your background, I have a confession to make with you, and I don't usually do this, but for a month or so, I had you muted on Twitter, and I'll tell you why I'm even telling you this and why it's important for the listeners to hear this. Because in life, we live in an echo chamber sometimes. We only hear what we want to hear and what people will tell us things that we know that they're going to agree with us and validate our opinion already. And that's not the right way to live life. Vinny, you don't give a shit. And what I mean by that is you're willing to say whatever you want to say, regardless of how people react. And a lot of flack has been put on you. And you've been very successful in business and you've been very successful in crypto. But what I really like about you, and that's why I'm telling you this confession, is that for a few weeks, maybe even a month, I had you muted because you said something that I may have not agreed with and I may have been frustrated by. So I don't remember what that was. So first, I'm sorry.
It's no worries at all. Thank you. Thanks for the
Um,
apology.
no, and I have to tell you this too. You know, I have a lot of respect for you as a mentor and a businessman, but I think I've never respected someone so much that I disagreed with. And I wish I could remember what exactly it was that I disagreed with. But can you um, tell us if if you remember, you know, saying something on Twitter or talking about something. I know that when it comes to like um, the market and the price, you're very on top of things, but you're also very open to your own opinions, whether or not people agree with that. Can you give us some of these opinions that you've had over the years that you've been right about that people give you a lot of flack for?
Well, I mean, look, I'm not going to go into what I was, whether I was right or wrong about anything, but my opinions have just basically been about the fact that it's a long road for Bitcoin to get to any heights which we think are you know mind-boggling. And when I say mind-boggling, like change the world mind-boggling, where governments are responding negatively as a result. And I think everyone just wanted to it to happen overnight, and everybody wanted the price to go to $1 million in 2017. And
Yeah.
I was just like, guys, this is not practical. Like, and bubbles are not great for Bitcoin, as we've seen now for the fourth time. And some would argue, no, it is good because it's like a step function. I just disagree. And so I think, 2017, I was kind of the fireman trying to put the fire out. I felt like Alan Greenspan in 1999. And
But a lot of
yeah,
people made the right financial decisions after reading your messages. They would say, you know, maybe this guy has a point. Maybe I should diversify or deleverage. And it ended up proving to be right because we saw what the ICO bubble and what everything did to the space.
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it got out of control. And I just try to be the voice of reason in a room where everyone's like, mad. And, it's just, I'm just a pragmatist. I'm just practical about things. And I mean, I wrote a blog post preventing the next Bitcoin bubble 2 years ago, more than
I
2.5 years
remember.
ago, and people hated that post. I just said, look, a slow and steady climb for Bitcoin would be much healthier for us in the long term. We'd see 30,000, 50,000 a lot sooner than if we go bubble bust, and it just causes people to lose money and savings. And I'm just very against people losing money. I think it's really sad when you see people around the world piling money into Bitcoin at like 20,000. They can't really afford to buy, and then it plunging down to like 3,000, and they've lost like 85% of their wealth. And for people who have wealth, they don't really care. They're like, I'll just hodl all the way through. But people who live, hand to mouth, they can't do that. And so I've just taken a very like negative view of the fact that people think Bitcoin is a get rich quick scheme.
No,
And
you're right, but don't you think that almost need bubbles? Like, I mean, that's a very big that's a very different opinion to have where a lot of people think that, you know, Bitcoin and crypto in general, and for the purpose of this conversation, let's just use the word Bitcoin and crypto interchangeably again for the
mhm.
purpose of this conversation. But don't you think that we almost like need bubbles because that's how markets will be efficient?
I mean, I tweeted that out at some point. I was like, you know what? Maybe we just need bubbles and busts to win. Like that's the way it is. And maybe maybe my view has changed. My view has changed over time, and that the fact that it's not that we need it, it's just that I just think it's inevitable. I think it's inevitable that Bitcoin goes to another bubble again, and the next one is bigger. And the only problem is a bubble, another Bitcoin bubble, crypto bubble at scale. If and when that crashes, it will cause a global recession because of the numbers involved. And that global recession will cause massive, negative, you know, attention from governments and, everyone in the world. Can you imagine if, like, we all think it's the next one is, this time it's different and we all go pile money into it and the world economy tanks 15-20% as a result of crypto? What do
You
you
think
think?
that could really happen?
I mean, that's what happens if there's another bubble, right? I mean, if there's another bubble and crypto goes from being worth $1 trillion or whatever it is, to like five over the course of 6 months or 12 months, and then there's no real earnings, there's no real yield.
This is a
It's
good
just,
point because you're right. Like if let's just say we're sitting at 9,000, let's just say over, I mean, these major bubble, when the price went from like 1,000 to 20,000, it happened very quickly over the course
yeah.
of weeks.
Mm.
And then it went down just, you know, just as fast and people were living in this disbelief. So I guess my question to you is, let's say hypothetically speaking, we're sitting at 9,000 now, there's some sort of event or something happens. And over the next like, let's just say 4 weeks, we see this price nonstop go from 9,000 to let's just say 100,000. And people go FOMO, Vinny, like FOMO that we've never seen before. So FOMO that you're FOMOing. Let's just say, and when you FOMO, then I get out. Like that's an indicator.
I don't FOMO though.
I know. I'm just
FOMO.
joking. I'm joking. But you see my point. Like, let's just say we go and everyone, like every people that you know are like buying Bitcoin at $30,000 and the next day it's 40 and they're not selling. And everyone puts money in. I mean, you're talking about a significant increase from 9,000 to 90,000. And then in the course of less than a week, you see the price go from 90,000 back down to like, let's just say 15 or 20. If that were to happen, what type of effects would we see, not just in the crypto space, but globally in terms of people who put their money into crypto?
So first of all, it's not going to go from 9,000 to 100,000 in 4 weeks. That's not practical, and for a lot of reasons. But most importantly, 20,000 is the new high. So for us to break 20,000, will probably take 2 or 3 or 4 attempts at that level and retesting it from the charts, etc. So I think you probably see it happening over 2 or 3 or 4 months, a consolidation at or around 20,000. And once it's gotten enough momentum to break through that, yes, then there could be a catalytic event that takes it well above that. It doesn't stop at 100,000 if we're talking about a fast-moving event. It goes up, 100 plus, and then it comes down. So the real numbers you have to work out is what is the Bitcoin dominance as a percentage. So if Bitcoin dominance is going down, that's a concern.
Hasn't it been going up, though?
Yeah, but I'm saying, so if the bubble basically gets to the point where Bitcoin dominance keeps going down, like down to 30%, 25%, and then you've got all this ICO money inflating it, that's or rather altcoin money. It's going to be that's the bubbles.
Well, one of the biggest fears I have is that if that were to happen, the next bubble, instead of people selling back into like hard cash dollars or whatever, and diversifying out into properties or whatever you want to, the right way, because you learned from bubbles before. That's why during 2017 you were able to kind of say, guys, we should take a look here. But I guess my question to you is, what about the scenario if people were to sell back into like Tether and USDT, TUSD, GUSD, USDDD, like, I mean, all these different, I don't know there's so many different of these stable coins. I feel like they're more dangerous than owning Bitcoin or Ether.
No, I mean, it's probably not. Okay.
Really?
So the stable coin market is evolving quite nicely. I mean, maybe Tether's got a lot more risks than the others, but I think if people are going into, DAI obviously would be a problem as well, because it's just linked to Ethereum, but just general stablecoins, USDC is pretty safe. Gemini dollars are safe, etc. So I'm not worried about those, and that's fine. Look, this is a complex topic, and we could go on for hours on this. But I'll summarize it by saying that the next bubble, if it is a bubble, like if it's slow and steady growth, I'm less concerned. But if it's rapid movements and it moves up too high into some sort of parabolic state, you just have to look at the market cap as a percentage of GDP, global GDP. And at Bitcoin at 100,000 would be somewhere like near $2 trillion. That's not that bad. Okay, when I say that's not that bad, it's conceivable. It's fine. It's probably okay. You probably see people piling money into it. If it went to, if the crypto market as a whole went to $5 trillion in less than 12 months, that's going to be concerning.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And that is concerning because if it does tank, it tanks typically 80%. You're going to wipe out $4 trillion in global GDP overnight, and the knock-on effects of that are immeasurable. So if we do see another bubble run or another run on crypto that gets us up to those levels, the response from governments with people losing that much money globally and that much wealth getting transferred into and lost into the crypto sphere would be catastrophic for crypto, because if you've ever seen governments respond negatively, now you'll see it happen.
No, I mean, we've seen how the governments treat something like Libra, and that's when there's someone to really like bring in front of a Senate hearing. I think you're right. I think but
it causes a global depression. Make no mistake.
No, you're right. I think the biggest. Sorry, you go first.
No, sorry. So the knock-on effect is crypto has caused a global depression. Let's ban crypto, because crypto is going to ruin the world's economies. And then the governments get to, even though, let's be frank, like the global depression is definitely coming. There's one on the horizon. Even though it may be the faults of governments in general over the years for allowing this to get to this point, the trigger point is always the catalyst is always what is blamed, right? The mortgage housing crisis was blamed in 2008, but it wasn't just that; it was a lot of things. But because that triggered the collapse, like that's what gets blamed. So can you imagine the next bubble bust? Crypto gets blamed. Crypto would just get banned.
You're 100% right. I'll tell you why. The biggest mandate governments have, they claim to have, is consumer protection, protecting their citizens. I mean, not just in economies, but I mean, you look at Russia, right? I mean, what was the pretense of Russia invading Crimea, or just to protect the Russian-speaking citizens? I mean, go back to the 1940s and 1939. You look, what was the reason that Hitler had to invade Czech Republic or Poland, is to protect the German-speaking citizens that live there. So I mean, that's definitely a real reason, not reason, but a real excuse that governments will have, especially if what you say happens and people start losing a lot of money or they get scammed or something were to happen. But I want to go back to 2012 because there was a very pivotal moment in crypto's history that's not talked about enough. And you were really very much a part of that pivotal moment. So let's go back to 2012. You launched Gyft, Gyft. I used to use Gyft when you started accepting Bitcoin. So for people who don't know, in May 2013, so think about how early this is in the crypto days. May 2013. This is super, super early. This was before, even the previous bubble before this one. But in May 2013, Vinny, who had founded Gyft, and the CEO, opened up the ability for people with Bitcoin to buy gift cards at over 50,000 merchants. This was such a big deal. Now, if this would happen today, you'd say, okay, whatever. But this was such a big deal in 2013 because the user experience was really good on Gyft, and it was quick and easy, and you could do it within the app itself. So what I started doing, Vinny, using your app, and you could probably go look at my history, was I actually started using Gyft to live on crypto. And I could think of actual moments. Like, for example, I remember standing outside Banana Republic with all my clothes ready to, I know I was shopping at Banana Republic, but I mean, I was having Bitcoin in the app, and then I would go and Gyft at the register and be able to buy gift cards. And I remember, and tell me if I'm wrong, but at one point you even allowed unconfirmed transactions to buy gift cards. Am I wrong on that?
Well, let's go through. So we did that, and one of the things that made the system amazing was we were using zero conf. We processed over 100,000 transactions using zero conf with not a single double spend. And we're talking, tens of millions of dollars. And, in BTC in those days at between 50 and $400 a coin, it was, a crap load of coins. So we did that. Zero conf was a really interesting mechanism to allow, Bitcoin to be used on a transactional basis on a daily basis globally. And we could accept payments from Nigeria even, and anywhere in the world, and not have to worry about the security of the money and the payments. So that's what we did, and that's what made Gyft very successful, is that we were able to build a global payment rails on top of zero conf payments.
Can you kind of walk us through, so you're running Gyft and nothing to do with Bitcoin, and one day you fall in love with Bitcoin, you decide to implement Bitcoin into Gyft, and you probably had investors and team members who were saying, what the hell are you doing? I mean, tell me about that.
I had every VC and every team member telling me I'm not.
Oh, I got to hear these stories, please.
No, like I even bet a bottle of wine with one of the engineers that we wouldn't hit $1,000 in sales in the first day.
Really?
Yeah. And like everyone thought it was just like this fringe thing that no one's interested in. My co-founders were like, what the hell are you doing? And they spoke to their VCs who hadn't even heard of, like, we spoke to our investors, they didn't even heard of Bitcoin, right? The VCs who invested in us, they were like, what's Bitcoin? And we were like, okay, this is, like, I'm doing it anyway. I'm the CEO and I get to make the decision, and we're going to do it, right? We did it. And we launched it. We had a couple of great articles on TechCrunch. John Biggs wrote us up twice in one day, I think. He was so excited about it. And, it was great. And we basically built the entire business on that. And the interesting thing about Bitcoin is Bitcoin was 90% of our sales up until the point we got to some level of scale, and we saw, we went on the Ellen show, etc. And then, but what Bitcoin really helped us do is get a lot of volume in from the community, and the community supported Gyft in a big way, which I'm still very grateful for.
Wait, Bitcoin became 90% of your sales?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God, that's
And well,
crazy.
it just grew so quickly, right? It overtook everything else.
Well, you provided a utility. I don't know if
Yeah,
you realize that, and I don't use the word utility lightly. I mean, when I say utility, I'm talking about like the lights or
yeah.
water or power.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you brought.
People were living off us. You weren't the only one. People were living off Gyft.
Did you have people email you or call you or
Oh,
tell you?
yeah.
Like,
We had huge fans. I mean, I think you probably see some of the reviews in the App Store still. It was amazing. And so the biggest challenge we had was getting merchants to come on board and give us their cards. So like in the early days, we had like Amazon maybe and a few others, but we didn't have like Starbucks. We didn't have all the other ones. And eventually we had enough volume coming through the platform that we were able to get more merchants on board, and then we were able to get more credit card sales, and it just became it basically ignited the business, and we got eventually bought by First Data, but we grew the business massively over the course of 18 months after we got acquired. But Bitcoin was the bedrock of our business, and we're talking about a massive amount of volume.
can you? I haven't done it in years, but can you still use Gyft to buy gift cards with Bitcoin?
Yeah, you can, as far as I know. I haven't done it in a while, but
Has
yeah.
so First Data is one of the largest financial companies in the world, and so you sold to them in 2014. Again, still very early in Bitcoin and crypto.
Mhm.
I don't even think Ethereum like existed yet. So
No, it didn't actually.
did you get pushback from First Data? Did they ever try to turn off the Bitcoin, or did they recognize that now
No,
this is like a thing?
they recognized that we had a strong community, and a lot of the sales at that time was coming. Eventually, like the Bitcoin sales went down to a small percentage because we just grew the business massively. But they were, I mean, they were very supportive of us using, continuing it. We obviously had some discussions about it, but we let them. We had a good KYC process internally. We were able to verify customers. We had good policies in terms of limits of how much people could spend. So we did a good business.
In 2012, I tried launching a business where I would allow people for very small amounts, $100, $200, to take credit off of old gift cards and buy Bitcoin with it for a utility purpose, to be able to buy small amounts of Bitcoin. And I approached First Data, and I remember they told me it was like the dumbest idea. No one cares about Bitcoin. It's fringe. It's stupid. And then here you are 2 years later selling your company to one of the largest financial companies in the world. And you probably changed their mind on Bitcoin. I probably should have approached them a year later.
Yeah, I was the crypto guy for a while when I was still there. Yeah.
I mean, but not only the crypto guy, but you probably helped change the minds and open up the eyes to Bitcoin to a lot of different people, and so that really was a big deal. I would say that Gyft was the first one of the first real Bitcoin utilities, and so when you do make your own opinions, which you're allowed to do, of course, crypto Twitter and these different places will come at you sometimes, but I don't think that a lot of people really know how invested and involved with you and how much risk you took going back those years. And so I guess on behalf of all crypto Twitter, thank you for that. And I'm sorry.
No, thanks, Charlie. I think one of the other things that people don't appreciate is how much data we had access to at Gyft. Like we had a ton of data. I mean, we could map sales to the Bitcoin price. We could look at human behavior.
Can you tell us about some of that?
Sure. I mean, so when Bitcoin would go up 20 or 30%, our sales would spike because people would be wanting to spend their Bitcoin. And sales were low. When Bitcoin price is low, people would not spend. So you could see the HODL rates go up and when the price is down, and you could see the spend rates go up when the price is up, and you could actually chart you could chart sales against technicals. And so there's a lot of data we had in terms of we could have traded Bitcoin crazily because we just had so much data coming in. We had we had millions of users.
How weird is that? In those years, you're telling me that when the Bitcoin price went up 20, 30%, people wanted to spend their Bitcoin.
Yeah, so contrary to popular belief on Twitter, people don't just hodl all the way up. They actually do spend on the way up. And you could tell, I mean, we didn't get too creepy, but you could literally go in, because we didn't have too much personal information anyway, so it was fine. We could anonymize data. We could look at, through the chain, you could see what when someone bought their coins, when they spent them, or at least not when they bought them at least, but when the coins were in an address, when they spent them, and you could derive a lot of data from that.
No, it's a great piece of advice. I think the advice, basically, what you're saying is that when the Bitcoin price is going up, or any asset that you have that's appreciating, don't just sell it for dollars to let it sit in your bank account. Sell it for something that's going to work for you. I mean, I remember when the Bitcoin price was $15,000, I bought my house. So it worked out I didn't just sell Bitcoin for the house. I sold to dollars, paid taxes, then bought the house. But the point is that buying assets that will work for you is the better way to do it. And that's great advice for people who are listening to the show.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think people need to realize that they need to maintain so one of the things that people think that you should hodl forever, like but if your Bitcoin gets to 95% of your wealth, like you have to ask yourself, like, what are you doing? Because it's and this is what happened in 2017, 2018. Like literally people, I mean, I have people who message me and I told them to sell and they sold and they bought a house. And then like I got a friend of mine, and the guy actually wanted a meeting eventually. He was very thankful because he sold it like 15,000 or something as well, and he bought his house. And he paid off his house and whatever else, and he was just like very thankful because I think I met him at like 5,000 or 3,000. He was like, it's the best advice she ever gave me.
I love those stories.
My wife is so happy now, and like, but it's great. Like I've always had a very conservative approach to crypto, where I try to make crypto not more than 20% of my wealth, and so if the price goes up too much,
I think even 20% is really high.
Well, it's not too high if you're well diversified, right?
True story.
So remember, 20% for someone who has 10K is $2,000. 20% for someone who has $5 million is $1 million. Like you got to ask yourself what the range is for you, because some people are just not comfortable having $1 million in crypto. Other people are totally fine with it, and at some point, like in 2017, crypto made everyone's portfolios look distorted, and you may have, even though you may be targeting 20%, you're sitting with 90%, and it's illiquid because you've got SAFs and you've got this and that, and so it's hard to balance a portfolio in crypto. And so you've got to just be, I would say, just be like, conservative.
That's the most understatement of the year.
Yeah,
there's a market maker that I know, and they give away T-shirts that say liquidity isn't great.
Yeah, exactly. This is the problem. Like, and look, if you're not a high net worth individual, and let's say you've got 25 or 50K in saving, and it's all in crypto, it's not the worst thing in the world because you're not losing $1 million, right? So you can keep, as long as you have some liquidity to pay your mortgage for a couple of months or whatever else, and but if Bitcoin's like peaking, I mean, you have to ask yourself, like, are you really willing to lose all that money? And so I think people need to maintain some amount of liquidity. I know some people just don't want to have any. They want to have like no, no dollars. I'm like, are you nuts? You have to pay your bills. Like shit can go wrong and prices can tank. And anyway, look, everyone's different. So this is the problem with crypto Twitter. Like everyone is in a different financial situation, and we're trying to make broad sweeping statements that apply to everyone. Like some people have got debt. Some people have got high overheads. They're supporting families. Some people have got like no job. And like, do you think the same advice applies to everyone? It's nuts.
No, right? I completely agree.
So we take this broad strokes approach that everyone should do the same, should like hodl, or everyone should like this, and and then like this person's a no coiner because they don't want to have any Bitcoin. Like you don't know someone's financial situation. Like if someone's living on the breadline and they're a no coiner, okay, it's like it's not their fault. It's just, I think people just need a bit more forgiving on Twitter and more respectful. I mean, I block people and I mute people, but I mainly block people who I just think are just rude and not considerate of others, and just if you're snarky or whatever, like generally it means that you have emotional issues and that you haven't dealt with it yourself. And so I'd rather have the person on my feed. I mean, if anyone, like most people I know in the industry would never post anything rude on my on like my feed. And people who've met me or just like even if you disagree with what I say, you can unfollow me or whatever. But I find some of the most interesting people out there who I actually follow, who don't follow me back, who dislike what I say. They're never rude to me.
That's a good point.
I think that like people who are just rude tend to have emotional issues that are unresolved.
How do you actually live your life on crypto? How do you spend Bitcoin? How do you live and actually help continue to grow this ecosystem? Since 2016, so for over 3 years, I've been personally using the BitPay prepaid Visa card, and it's amazing. So check it out at bitpay.com/card. That's bitpay.com/card. You can also buy gift cards from over a dozen merchants in the app itself. So it's pretty easy. You get the card in the mail, you activate it, you download the app, you send some Bitcoin to the app, and you load the card into dollars with your Bitcoin and then spend it. It's so easy, it's so convenient, and I've been using it for a few years. Check it out, bitpay.com/card. All right, so I hope you didn't skip my ad because in the early part of the episode, we talked about how Bitpanda is working with us here at Untold Stories. Bitpanda is the leading European platform for investing in digital assets. I really like Bitpanda's approach. Why? I'll tell you why, so don't skip. Basically, what they're doing is to apply the same tech you're used to from Bitcoin to other digital assets. So, for example, you trade real precious metals like gold and silver on their platform 24/7 with ultra low fees. And what's really cool is that you can trade gold and silver and these other precious metals with other assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptos that they support. So in a nutshell, Bitpanda is advocating the tokenization topic. So they want to bring financial products like stocks, ETFs, and more to everybody who uses their platform anywhere in the world. So check them out, bitpanda.com. Support my sponsors. Have a great day. I want to talk to you about the Bitcoin Foundation. Another topic that you and I have never really gotten a chance to talk about. So on my Twitter profile, on my profile right now, I actually mention Bitcoin Foundation. I say founding director of Bitcoin Foundation. And I do get a lot of flack for that. I get a lot of flack, probably once a month for that. People, for what the foundation became. And I keep it on. I'll tell you why I keep it on. I'm proud of the intentions and I'm proud of the ideas and thoughts and foresight that, the original people had for starting the Bitcoin Foundation. And I guess I'm not settled. I haven't been able to wrap up that segment of my life and move on because I feel like I don't understand how it went from what the idea was to what it should be to what it actually became. I don't know where the disconnect was. Now you're a board member. I'm not sure if you are still a board member of the foundation. You got involved.
No, I actually resigned.
Okay, I resigned too, so we're the same in that.
Oh.
The idea for the foundation and hopefully, and if you can't tell me, then we can move on. But I mean, I'll tell you where the idea came from and tell me where it got messed up. And I'm doing this for the purpose of this show, for history, because this show will be listened to in 10, 20 years. And I want people to know my feelings and your feelings in the history of the foundation. So the foundation started, it started with a coffee meeting between me and Gavin. So Gavin and I were having coffee in Vienna. It was 2011. And I said, hey, Gavin, what if we had this idea where we basically take the dozen or so companies in the space, we all put in a little bit of money every year, and it allows us to be able to pay developers to work on Bitcoin. It allows us to do common advertising. It allows us to travel, go to conferences, and most importantly, it allows us to run our own conference. This will be like a trade organization, just representing the companies that are a member of this organization. And we should do that. And Gavin said, sounds great. It's a great idea. And then it seems like it became this thing that tried to represent the whole Bitcoin community. And that's where it failed immediately. What do you think about that?
Look, I think it's had we've moved to a different point in time. I think at the time it was noble intentions. And I think I was on the board for a while trying to make sure that we can continue that. We've always had a checkered past with certain board members and if you look at we cleaned it up pretty well. I brought in Lou and Brock was there and Bobby Lee and a couple others. We were all together trying to clean up the organization, and we did a good job of cleaning up. But we posted minutes. We did a lot past couple of years. But it just got to the point where I think everyone, for better or worse, the previous directorship of the foundation, damaged it to a point where it was just not recoverable, and it lost the community support. And that is what it is. And I came in trying to clean it up, and I think we did it. I think we cleaned it up, but I think it was just too little, too late. And so I stepped off. I still think that it can keep going to some extent, but Bitcoin's become a very global thing now, and it's there's a lot of contributors to it. The wealth appreciation in Bitcoin means that most of the developers who had coins don't need a foundation to support them. Maybe they do. I don't know, but you've got Blockstream supporting them, so that's great, and Chain Code Labs.
What does the foundation even do now?
It's mainly been dealing with regulatory backlash.
So there is still work being done. There is a budget.
There's a lot of good work, but there's no budget really. That's the problem. The foundation doesn't have funds, And so whenever regulators want to figure out what to do, and normally uninformed regulators, they come to the Bitcoin Foundation because they send us like subpoenas and
True
stuff.
story. There's Coin Center. There's the Chamber for Digital Commerce.
But they come to the Bitcoin Foundation because that's the name, and they want to send a subpoena to us. Like, and we're like, okay, and then we go and educate them and explain to them what's going on. But it's kind of like, well, you know what? Let's just. I mean, my view is that it can keep running, but it's not well funded, and I've put money into it and try to help it out, but it's just not something which I think we need anymore at this point.
That's a very good point, and that's okay though, right? Like I'm okay with that.
Okay, yeah. It served its purpose for a long time.
That's my point. It served its purpose, and it's okay for things to like just kind of be done with. The mandate ending. I mean, you see companies close up shop all the time, and they've been around. Like there's a gas station down here on Main Street where I live, and the guy's been around. He's the oldest gas station. He's been around for like 70 years or something, or not 70 years, like 50 years, and he still will pump your gas. He's like 80 years old. He'll pump your gas. He'll do everything. You can't pump your own gas. And I'm like, Dick, like, I love your gas station. I come here, but I'm like, almost like you're probably not making any money anymore. What's the deal? And it's almost sad to see that still exists and still running when other gas stations have opened up around him. But he loves what he does. So I guess hopefully he doesn't shut down because I love it, but it's a little bit sad. So I guess that was my point. And maybe now I can get some closure on this, but not the
I mean, look, I think Brock's still there, Bobby Lee's still there, a couple others, and they're still trying to do whatever they can. But I don't think anything, I don't think anyone's there's not going to be any fireworks out of it.
So encrypting data on the blockchain is a killer app, right? It's been talked about forever. Encrypting identity. Well,
I'd rephrase that, but yeah, carry on.
No, how would you rephrase that? Tell me.
I don't think data should be stored on a blockchain almost ever.
Okay, but you started a data company though, Civic.
But we don't store data on the blockchain. We use blockchain as a public key infrastructure for digital, for effectively, key validation.
But if data is encrypted, why is it a bad idea to store it on the blockchain other than bloat? I know the blockchains can get bloated.
So picture this, right? If you put all your data on a blockchain, someone's access to your keys and they can decrypt it. It's like you can't modify things that are on a blockchain. It's committed. It's there forever, right? So putting data on a blockchain that can be, at some point in time reverse engineered through, quantum computing or whatever else is not a great idea in general. Like I'm not a big fan of storing it. So with Civic, when we've designed our architecture, we keep the data on your device. And when you handle your data over, we allow the recipient to basically validate that the keys that we use to sign and encrypt the data on the passover was your keys. That's it. It's literally meant as key distribution and like more like a public key infrastructure play rather than putting the data on a blockchain. I mean, I think that putting any PII on a blockchain is a bad idea.
I think
but having said that, I'm waiting for someone to go and just do that.
But let me ask you a question though. Yeah. So you think it's a bad idea, right? And and that's fine. I mean, a lot of people think that's a bad idea too. I mean, I remember going back like 2012 when Eric launched Satoshi Dice, and that was being done on chain. Luke and a lot of people called that spam and said it was a bad idea. Some people even tried to go far as to ban it, to ban whatever is perceived.
Like when you say data, what data are you talking about?
Well, Satoshi Dice was being run on chain, and at the time, I forgot, we had Eric's episode just launched a few days ago, so I don't have the exact number on me, but a very significant portion of whatever was happening on blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, was Satoshi Dice. And so a lot of people at the time were calling it spam, and to a point where Luke tried to put in a BitPay, a Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, to get that banned. And that was a big red flag, because who gives the right of anyone to say what should and shouldn't be on the blockchain? If you're willing to pay the fees for it, then you should be able to put whatever you want on the blockchain.
No, I don't disagree on that point. I disagree on the point where if you're doing it for other people and you're putting PII, personally identifiable information, onto a blockchain, I don't think that that's a good idea in general, because
for safety and security reasons. That's a good point.
Safety, security, privacy. Yeah, like I'm pro privacy. I just don't think that's a good idea.
Can you tell me the difference? Tell us the difference between privacy and anonymity.
So privacy means that two people at least. So if you and I perform a transaction and that's private, that means just the two of us know about it. Or if it could be a 3 or 4 party transaction, that's private. No one else can see it except the parties to the transaction. Anonymous means that I'm performing a transaction and no one else knows about who I am, etc. So privacy is is really about restricting like who knows what it is to the people who it's intended for. And anonymous transactions are nobody on either side knows who it is.
Do you think in our world we can have both?
I think for small transactions, anonymous is probably fine. For large transactions, under the regulatory environment we live in globally,
No.
men with guns, no.
Oh yeah, no. Anonymity will never be like huge.
It's not part of a society. I mean, like you got to understand, like the technology mimics society in a sense. Okay, and
what do you mean by that?
It's a function of society. Like when you walk into a bar and people know like they see you, you're a human, right? And it's totally fine for us to be recognizing that as a human being walking to the bar because you can see them, etc. We would be it would be very difficult for us to have a society where androids are walking around a bar and acting like humans right now, right?
Of course.
Because you don't know who's there, who's seeing that information, who's recording it. Like, you can imagine it's effectively a robot walking around recording everything.
But like Black Mirror.
Exactly. So I haven't watched that episode, but I'm guessing, but can you imagine, that we would be comfortable with machines that looked like humans?
That would be a big problem too.
Right. So like, Blade Runner-esque type scenario where it's just you're not sure whether the human is really human, because the thing about humans right now is that we absorb information, it stays in our head, but unless we have recording instrumentation, it's it's a one-to-one relationship. When I talk to you one-to-one having coffee, like I'm pretty sure that you're not recording it, you're not doing this, but like the functions of a human is we have this trust in society that you and I are humans there. If you were talking to a machine, the next thing you're wondering about is where's the data going, who's recording it, where's it being transmitted.
There was an episode of Black Mirror where in one of the first seasons where everyone had this like camera in their eyes that allowed them to basically record their whole lives, and it allowed them to like rewind and look at anything. Would that if that were to exist, if you all of a sudden tomorrow can put like a contact lens in your eye that recorded everything, would you think that would be something that would, exclude someone's right to privacy, or is it more anonymity? I mean, how do you think our society would react to that? I know it's not crypto, but I'm curious on your view on this.
Well, I mean, look, I don't think we have much privacy these days anyway. Everywhere we go, there's cameras everywhere.
True.
Recording devices anyway. But my back to my point of like how we mimic society, like we have certain rules that evolve over time, right? So I can imagine a world where 30 years time you have bars where no androids are allowed in, for argument's sake. You basically get to this
like e-cigarettes.
Total Recall, Blade Runner, etc., where like androids are differentiated from humans, and we have different rules. So like the rules in society, like technology mimics those rules. So the technology has to conform to the rules of society.
Wait a minute, technology has to conform to the rules of society. I feel like that would be great if that were the case, but
over the long term, not in the short term. The problem in the short term is that technology is
faster.
It's faster, right? And so society has to play catch up. But ultimately, like and every society is different. Every pocket of society is different, have different rules. I mean, it's amazing if you look at some parts of the world, how some technology is just banned and people still use analog because of just trust issues. But my point is, I think one drives the other, and I think that it's often an ebb and a flow. So sometimes technology will get ahead of society, and then society catches up. But eventually, you get too far ahead, then regulators are there; they have jobs to do. They have to regulate, otherwise they're out of a job.
That's true. That's a good
point. So regulations are going to come in more and more, and you're already seeing that right now. Look at the Facebook debacle, right? Like the government has let Facebook just do what they want for many years, and all of a sudden they're under
all of a sudden they're flipping out. Right. Yeah, I mean with data breaches and things like that, though.
The pendulum always swings too far on one end or the other, And so you can always expect a retaliation from regulators and government. There's
I
some people who think we'd be better living in an unregulated society, but then there's that's a different world, which I think deserves a bit more inquiry. It's not as simple as it's not as simple as stated, right?
True story. It's safe to say that you've been a serial entrepreneur. You're pretty much your whole adult life. In 2013, you founded a company Incubator. In 2007, you launched Yola. This was pre-Bitcoin. Then you went into working with charitable organizations. And I want to talk to you about the Silicon Cape Initiative because I love South Africa. You were awarded a bunch of different awards, by the World Economic Forum. And then you got into crypto like full time. You Gyft and Civic, and then you did one of the coolest things, and I'm not sure if you're still doing it, but you're basically, the star of the South African version of Shark Tank called Dragon's Den. So, why did I say all that? You probably know, definitely better than me, but probably better than most people, what makes up a good team? What makes up a good entrepreneur? What makes up good management? Tell me some stories from the TV show. Tell me some stories from your companies and people you've met along the way, of some times where you walked into a meeting and you say, this kid is going to kill it, whatever he does. Or someone, you met a CEO of a company and you say to yourself, I have no idea how this guy is even a CEO right now.
I have lots of stories.
We have lots of time.
So I did Shark Tank South Africa and Dragon's Den. They're actually two different series.
Oh, they're two different series.
Yeah. And then,
cool.
so look, the three things I currently do right now is I obviously run Civic. I'm a general partner at Multicoin Capital, and I'm also a general partner at Newtown Partners, which is my VC fund in South Africa. And
I love that name, Newtown Partners. I'm assuming after the township in Cape Town.
Actually, funny story. My co-founder Lou, he was on the set of Dragon's Den in 2014 when I was filming that, and we were like, let's just start a VC fund, and it was actually in Newtown in Johannesburg, and we were like, okay, call it Newtown Partners. So that's the where we came up with the name.
I love that name. Here in Florida, we have a neighborhood called Newtown, and it's not the safest neighborhood. So when you call it that, it's actually pretty cool. I like that name a lot. In fact, I feel like a great VC fund in Florida would, if they call themselves Newtown Partners, it would be, or like Newtown VC could be a really cool name. But that's completely separate. Yeah. So tell me about like people, like what type, because you have a lot of people that listen to this show are VCs, but they're also entrepreneurs. Most of people that listen to this show are entrepreneurs. I mean, tens of thousands of different people. What type of qualities should they try to achieve? What type of qualities should they try to have? And not like the textbook things, but what do you look for? As soon as I walk into a meeting, what are like some basic things that you look for that would be automatic great first impressions or automatic great red flags?
So I think one of the most interesting things that I've come to the conclusion with is in entrepreneurship is the most the single. I mean, there's lots of indicators, right? But one of the indicators I look for is grit, perseverance. Entrepreneurship is hard. It's supposed to be hard. It's not an easy thing. It's become glamorized of late, and people have had easy times. They've had a lot of luck and right place, right time type scenarios. But generally, what I will say is grit and perseverance is the most important attribute for an entrepreneur, because if you can get through the toughest times and you can make it through there and you don't quit and you get to the end, and sometimes you don't have a choice, right? You run out of money, the thing ends, whatever. But generally, it's the ones that will it's the cockroaches. those are the guys who I've seen. I've had really good returns from, and people who just will not say die. And obviously, you need to have all the other stuff. You have to be smart. You have to be, you have to be thoughtful. You have to be driven and analytical, and you have to have a good idea. But it's the grit and perseverance that separates the wheat from the chaff, literally. And that's the one thing I look for.
Were there moments from your childhood, growing up in the Eastern Cape, that kind of still stay with you, that allow you to get over that hump when you're feeling that you can't get over it?
I think it was more like, I wouldn't say my childhood, but just I think generally I think most of my adult life. just grit and determination, willing to work harder than everyone else.
But why? Why are you willing to work hard? Because I've seen it. You don't stop. I mean, I'm looking at my notes here. I'm trying to, I'm asking because I want to know for myself. I'm not 30 yet. I want to be a serial entrepreneur. What is it?
It's just math. It's just math. It's just math to some extent, right? So when I was in my early 20s, I did the math. I'm like, okay, I have no work experience. I was going to my first job. I just had a company. Like I had I started. I kind of got involved in the business and it just didn't quite work out. And it was in the food category, and I wasn't really interested in food, so it's more of a family business. And I was like, look, I tried doing some frozen food stuff. It was about a year doing that. And then I decided to go work in Johannesburg for a while. And I dropped out of university because like, it's a long story, but my dad's company was in a little bit of financial difficulty with the emerging markets crisis in 98. And so I didn't finish my final year at university. And I was literally the top programmer in my class, like by a mile.
Oh, so you're a dropout. Wow.
Yeah. So I dropped out.
I didn't know that.
I was like kind of depressed. I went on Prozac and I was like, because when you,
yeah, of course.
When you talk, like I was planning on doing masters and PhD and everything else, I love programming. It was my thing.
What'd you do that first year?
When I dropped out?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I went back to help in the business and spent about a year there trying to fix things up. And I did an okay job on the business side, but it just wasn't my thing. I mean, I just realized, like, what am I doing in the food industry?
No, if you don't have passion for the frozen food industry, then it's kind of tough to be in that space. I have a friend who loves it. Like literally, it's his passion. He started. He's doing his third company. Sold the other two in groceries. I don't get it. I guess it's what he's good at.
Yeah, and people appreciate it, but it was just too linear for me. So I moved up to Johannesburg, worked there for a while, and it was just the grit. Like so when I go back to the math around it, like
wait, I want to point this out to my listeners here. Like I'm looking at a bio that I prepared of Vinny, and it includes all success. But what these bios never include, very rarely, is failures. And Vinny, what you're talking about is it's math. You had success, but you also had things that you failed at. I
had a big failure back then. Back then, I it wasn't a lot of money, but I lost some investor money, and it was just a depressing time. I was basically like maxed out on credit card debt. I had no place to stay.
Wow.
I was like 20 years old and kind of on the streets of Johannesburg trying to find a job. And and I mean, I've got lots of little stories along the way, but eventually I managed to find a job, more of a contract thing. It was kind of a weird thing. I did like an acqui-hire because I built this little thing on the website on the side that back in the .com days, like April 2014, I was able to like flog this thing for a couple of $1,000, and the guy gave me a job.
That's
working
crazy.
In this company for a few months. I had like a 6-month contract, and then that contract ended, and I didn't have a job for like 2 or 3 months more. And then I found another job, but once I got into a stable sort of work environment for a couple of years, like 2 or 3 years, I realized that it was so much I just didn't know about working in a company and working startup. I eventually joined a startup. It was like 50 people, and they grew to 300 people. But the one thing I learned was, if you're working 8 hours a day, like a 9-to-5 job, you cannot get ahead of anyone else. It's just not possible because everyone else is working 8 hours. That's the baseline. So if you want to have exponential growth, you need to up that. So I used to like start work at, we used to work US hours because we did online marketing on Google and Overture and those platforms back in those days. And so I was working US hours, and it was 1 to 10 was the prescribed hours, but I would literally come in at like maybe 8 or 9, maybe probably 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd finish at like 12 at night. And I just worked harder and longer than everyone else for years. And when I started my first company, Tixi Customers, I did the same thing. I was working 18, 20 hours a day, every single day, 7 days a week. And so I maintained that for about a decade. So for about a decade, I was probably putting out 20 hours a day. I'd say 80 hours a day on average of work, and sleeping very little, which is very unhealthy.
That's a great quote, though.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Well, it's a great quote. It's a great point. That 8 hours is the baseline. Like that should be written down somewhere. 8 hours is what everyone else is doing. So if you want to get ahead in life, you need to do better and do more what everyone else is doing.
And you don't get to exponential until 12. So like you won't be exponentially better than your peers until you're doing 12 hours a day. And remember, it's not about like and get the
no, it's not about sitting at a desk for 12 hours a day. It's about being productive.
Yeah. So like people think that it's the old adage, like, hey, I've been a bank teller for 10 years. So the real question is, have you been Have you done like 10 years work experience, or is it 1 year's work experience repeated 10 times? Like, so it's very different when you're doing the same job repetitively and you're doing, like, if you're just a cashier and you're working 12 hours a day or 18 hours a day, you're not going to grow. Like, that's not going to happen. It's the same repetitive function. If you're doing non-repetitive work functions, but you're doing 12 to 16 hours a day of that every single day, your mind expands, you grow, you're learning, you build businesses. And so the job function is very important too. So as a CEO running a company, if you're working 18 hours a day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, yeah, you're probably going to grow much faster than someone who's only doing 8 hours a day and is not a CEO, because the scope of work is just different.
Well, so on that
So
note, you're
yeah.
still CEO of Civic, but you're also, like you said, you're a partner at two funds, Multicoin and Newtown
Hmm.
Partners. But I want to talk about the Silicon Cape initiative because that's a nonprofit for you. It's an NGO. What gave you the idea to start that, and what type of things are you doing to help South Africans, especially in the Western Cape, kind of harness that energy and the skills that they have to really to grow financially, but also psychologically too.
I spend about 2, 3 weeks a year in South Africa at the moment. And when I moved here to the US in California in 2008, I just realized there was this lack of a rally point. There was no like ecosystem rally point in Cape Town, in particular.
Well,
And
why not
so,
though?
well, it was just tech was just very nascent back then, right? It was just like not, because it wasn't a very profitable industry from the software startup side. There was just, the industries that evolved, they were focused on other areas, food, tourism, etc. And so I started making some investments there and helping our companies, and I just realized that they just didn't have there just wasn't a rally point. And when we launched Silicon Cape, we planned to have 30 people in a room, and then we had so many people trying to jump on board. It went to 130 people, and then we eventually went to 500 plus people. We eventually had to hire out the biggest venue in this course of like 2 weeks.
Wow.
Um, and we had this huge event. People pitched up there, and we launched Silicon Cape. And myself and Justin, my co-founder, we basically said, look, we committed on a 20-year vision for what happens in South Africa. And I kind of stepped down from the board after the first year and let the locals on the ground run it, and they've been doing a great job of it over the past decade or so. And my contribution has been to set up a VC fund there that invests locally. My partner Lou runs it, and I just think that it's good to have network effects. Better network effects was good for the area. People knew who was working in it. Yeah, they could connect each other and help, and it was a very like strong camaraderie that developed down there. And so Africa has become a mini tech hub. At least for Africa, it's a large tech hub, but the startup community is growing and it's thriving. I think there's some really good exits with companies. One of the companies I invested in, I was the first investor in, was Deep South.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Sweet South was this is a good example. Female black entrepreneur in South Africa starting a business, and they hadn't. I was literally the first check in. I helped them grow it. The first year or so, they had major financial difficulties and put in bridge money, etc. Eventually, now they're employing 20,000 black female, workers. It's what do you call it, cleaning service, and they provide for 20,000 families in South Africa. If you think about it, it's an amazing task. Like in 5 years, they've gone from zero to creating 20,000 low income jobs in South Africa, which is
How
much needed in the country.
how close are you to the CEOs of these companies that you invest in? Because this is the second time that you've told me that a project, was successful, then had financial difficulties, then was successful. So it seems like that, your CEOs are willing to like talk to you about when they're having problems. How do you approach problems like that? And how do you maintain yourself as approachable that they're not afraid to talk to you as the investor when times are hard?
I mean, I was very close to them. I met them at a conference. I was the judge on the panel, and then afterwards we built a good relationship. My Lou sat on the board, my partner, and so we were close to them from that perspective. And they would come to Silicon Valley. They would come, hang out with me there, take them for dinners, etc., and learn a lot. And they were just very open to learning. And I think that's the important part. When you open to learning, it really helps. And no, I mean, look, as an investor, I care, and I'm approachable, and I think it's important that investors are supportive, and often you just have to believe in the people because the numbers don't always make sense. And so, if you believe in the people, you can get to sort of good outcomes, and sometimes they just need a few more months runway. Sometimes people just need 6 more months or 12 more months.
That's a good point. Sometimes they just need some time to develop what they're building.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, where do we go from here in terms of crypto? So, obviously, I get people on the show. They tell me, "Yeah, massive bubble, 100K." We talked. We had a very good conversation earlier in the show. Where do you see? I have two questions for you. Where do you see, the price? And I really hate that question, but given your opinions, I want to hear it. But if we were to completely take the price away right now, and I asked you, Vinny, what's the state of the crypto industry? And no price existed. Where are we at right now?
It's hard to say. I think there's heavy resistance levels at 12,000, as we can see. I tweeted that out before it even hit there. And 12,000 is a big resistance. I think you'll probably find a lot more of a gap between 12 and 20,000, but 20,000 is going to be major resistance. I don't see us breaking it before halving. Maybe after, but before halving, almost certainly not. But never know. After halving, I think the halving the next year is going to be a little bit more placated than the previous times, because the inflation rate drop isn't that significant compared to previously. Like the previous inflation rate drops were quite significant. This one's less so. It still will have an impact. It will have an impact on minor costs. So there is some potential fallout there. I think next year is going to be the toughest year for Bitcoin in many respects. Going through 2020.
You're not the first person to say that. Can I tell you that? You're not the first person to say
Really?
that 2020.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. No. You're definitely not the first person to say that. And a lot of people have come onto the show and say 2020 is going to be one of those years that we almost like, it's just going to be a lot of work, a lot of grit, a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, and a lot of nervousness. But if we can get through the next year, everything will look really good on the other side. But yeah,
I almost feel the same way. I feel like in 12 months' time, it's going to be, we'll know where this is all going.
Yeah. I want to accumulate, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and the real question is, are you going to accumulate at these levels or lower or higher? And no one knows, right? So I just think that it's going to be a very, there's a lot of dynamics that happen around a halving. And the last halving, the last couple of halvings have been on the back of strong forward momentum. And if the market stays depressed or goes down into a halving, look, we all know there's technical and security risk for Bitcoin around a halving.
Always.
It's never actually, the markets have always protected it. And the real question is, are we at the level now where the market can protect Bitcoin with this halving? Who knows? I don't know. I think it's safe to assume that it probably will, because it always has. But I never liked living in the past and saying just because something always happened, it will happen in the future. So I think it's good to keep an eye out. And I don't want to go into all the potential outcomes and this and that that could happen. But there are, like Bitcoin is not a risk-free proposition yet. It may be in the future, but it just isn't right now. And many people think it is, and I think it's kind of foolish to think that we could go, we can that Bitcoin, like. Some people are religious about Bitcoin in the sense that it cannot fail, and even people like Wences believe it can fail, right? And he's a Bitcoin bull. I mean, look, him and I both supported the SegWit 2x movement, and there was a lot of flack for that. But at the end of the day, we still believe in like what we hope evolves over time with global decentralized money solution. But I still think there are significant risks. Maybe I'm a little bit more paranoid than other people. But I don't think the risk is zero.
I don't think the risk is zero either, and I agree that you should always understand the risks versus the reward of anything you're trying to do, whether that's an invest. And I think we're very far away. I think Bitcoin and crypto, this whole industry, I mean, it's less than 10 years old. I'm talking about the industry, not when Bitcoin first launched. There's a lot of years that need to go. There's a lot of mistakes that need still to be made. There's a lot of breaking that's going to happen. There's a lot of figuring it out, because you're a believer in free markets, but markets are efficient when we allow them to be.
They're not always
but
free.
They take
Markets
time.
aren't always free.
True.
I mean, markets are manipulated as well, so they're not always free.
Vinny, thank you so much for taking the time for coming on the show. I think you have a great history, and you definitely open up the ears. You definitely open up my ears, and you open up a lot of ears to people that are listening to the show. You're the CEO of Civic, and for people who do not want to live in an echo chamber and to want to hear things that they may not agree with, or things that they probably will agree with, how can people follow you?
Follow me on Twitter. I mean, I've been a bit quiet lately, and I haven't written any blog posts for a while.
You got to get back on that.
I'm just saying, I'm just staying out of it right now. And like I said, like I think I'll be a lot more active maybe in about 9 months' time. I want to see how things play out over the next. I think we're heading for a very dangerous period in the next 6 to 9 months in crypto, and so towards in 12 months from now, I'll be a lot more vocal and etc. But right now, I've had a lot of flack, and I'm just like, I don't need this. I don't need to be sharing my views as actively as I used to because, and I'm just because I think it doesn't benefit people I want it to benefit anymore because of just where the market is. A lot of people are just not following anymore anyway.
That's a good point. You can get a lot more value out of speaking to these people directly with your opinions than if you were to post it online or whatever. And not everyone is deserving of your opinions, Vinny.
That's why I do block people. And a lot of people who were blocked during the late 2017 run, they probably lost money because while I was telling people, hey, this is kind of crazy, they weren't listening. And that's fine, And so I'm happy not to share, cast pearl into swine, so to speak. And not to say everything I say is like, brilliant, genius, or correct. It's not about that. It's about, look, not living in an echo chamber, listen to other points of view. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong. Form your own opinions, do your own research. But, in order to do that, you need to be exposed to all the different views out there. And I think people who have a closed mind, nothing you can do, you can open it. And I'm happy to sit back. But like for now, I obviously part of Multicoin. I share my views with Alan Tashar on a weekly basis. We have our weekly call. We've done reasonably well as a fund. So I think we're doing something right. But generally, I feel less and less a need to share my views in crypto with the world right now, and that may change in a year from now. But let's get through the dangerous period first.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your views on this show. And I think after listening to the show, people are going to want to hear what you have to say. So I hope you see an increase in follower count. You will,
Thanks.
and I hope people
and Charlie, if I have blocked anyone who wants to be unblocked, it's just I ask them just to have a friend message me or something.
Yeah.
And
don't fucking unblock them. You do whatever you want. It's your Twitter.
No, I'm happy to give. I'm always happy to give people a second chance, and I've unblocked people before. And if they want to be unblocked, that's totally fine. Just send a message and just be respectful and don't post rude comments. I'm fine with it.
Amazing. I'm Charlie Shrem, everyone, and you've been listening to Untold Stories. Thank you. How do you actually live your life on crypto? How do you spend Bitcoin? How do you live and actually help continue to grow this ecosystem? Since 2016, so for over 3 years, I've been personally using the BitPay prepaid Visa card, and it's amazing. So check it out at bitpay.com/card. That's bitpay.com/card. You can also buy gift cards from over a dozen merchants in the app itself. So it's pretty easy. You get the card in the mail, you activate it, you download the app, you send some Bitcoin to the app, and you load the card into dollars with your Bitcoin and then spend it. It's so easy, it's so convenient, and I've been using it for a few years. Check it out, bitpay.com/card. New episodes go live every Tuesday at 7 a.m. EST. Links to our Apple and Spotify channels are in the show notes. You can also follow me on Twitter, Charlie Shrem, to continue the conversation. See you next week.